Hi, everyone. So today we're going to talk about midlife and aging development. So first off, we're going to get into the physical changes of midlife, and those are classified by weight gain, hearing loss, vision, which is typically your night vision, it gets worse, and your up close vision gets worse. So that's why you see older people getting glasses to read a lot of the time. Their physical decline also accelerates during midlife, which is like your muscular strength and your reaction time. And this typically has less to do with age than it does with health and exercise habits. For example, my dad, who just turned 50, runs like 4, 5, 6 miles 3 to 4 times a week and can do it with relative ease and very quickly. Whereas me, a 22-year-old, walking up the RB stairs, I can barely last. And that's because he has established these exercise habits of running a few times a week for the past like 20 years. And so he's able to keep that physical strength and endurance despite his age, I guess. He wouldn't like to say that, but and activities such as smoking exacerbate that decline, so it makes it go a lot faster. And you're typically not aware of the physical decline until later in life, even though it begins in early adulthood. Typically, you peak around the age of like 26, and so you start declining in your late 20s. And midlife, for the purposes of this class, is the ages from 40 to 60. And so, yeah, we can move on to late adulthood. Some interesting facts about that is that life expectancy has increased from 50 to 73 years from 1950 to 2015. So in 65 years, life expectancy has gone up 23 years, which is really good. And on average, women outlive men by 4.7 years. Some of the bad things about late adulthood, the physical changes, are that our immune system weakens. And so we're more prone to things like cancer or dying from pneumonia and stuff like that. And it also takes longer for us to process information. So, like driving, your reaction time might be a little bit slower. And so you might get into more accidents. You do actually have fewer short-term ailments, such as like the common cold or flu, because you have a lifetime building up the antibodies to these, and so you're less likely to suffer from that, which I think was really interesting. Also, your impulsiveness from like your teenage years may return in later adulthood because your frontal lobe starts to atrophy and you start to get that impulsiveness back, which is really interesting. And a good note is that exercise actually slows aging. It enhances muscles, bones, helps to prevent obesity and heart disease, protects chromosome ends, it slows the progression of Alzheimer's disease. It enhances memory, sharpens judgment. So really what I'm saying is start those exercise habits now, because those will help you in the long run, literally. So we can move on to cognitive changes now. So some just like interesting facts about cognitive changes is that 70-year-olds actually vary much more in their abilities to learn and remember than many other age groups. So say like 50-year-olds or 20-year-olds, they're actually more condensed in their ability to learn, whereas 70-year-olds, the best of the best might be really good, but the worst of the worst are also really bad, which is really cool. And remembering in late adulthood often depends on the type of information we're trying to retrieve, because meaningless information, the older you are, the more errors we make. Whereas if it's meaningful information, such as a poem or story that we really like, that actually is pretty easy to remember, although it might take a little bit longer because you have a lot more knowledge base and a lot more memories to look back on when you're trying to remember something when you're older. Older adults more often experience tip of the tongue forgetting, which is like you can't exactly remember the word, but you feel like it's coming to you really soon. And an interesting study compared video game playing and Lumosity, which is a like really renowned brain training program. And they found that Lumosity did not improve mental performance compared to video game playing. What it does is that it gets you better at the skills and like the tasks that you're working on in Lumosity, but any kind of other tasks that don't have anything to do with that, it doesn't help at all. And then a little quick definition. So there's the word terminal decline, and that is as your memory and intelligence decline as death approaches, typically in the last 3 to 4 years. And this is natural death, not like a car accident or something like that, because nothing can really predict that. But if you're just dying really from like old age or something like that, in the last 3 to 4 years, your memory and intelligence will decline. So moving on to some neurocognitive disorders and Alzheimer's. So dementia is just a general term for like neurocognitive disorder, for the impaired ability to remember, think, or make decisions that interfere with doing everyday activities. And heavy smoking actually more than doubles the risk of this. So please don't smoke. I mean, we're all at BYU, but don't smoke. And hearing loss and social isolation predict risk of depression and mental decline. And so Alzheimer's disease is just a type of dementia. It's really bad dementia, essentially, and it affects 3% of the world's population by the age of 75. And it's characterized by the loss of brain cells and less production of acetylcholine, which is vital to memory and thinking. And we have the ability to test for the susceptibility gene or check for the protein fragments, although there's currently no cure, unfortunately, for it. So there are some ethical concerns with like looking, like actually testing for it, because do you want to know that you're gonna maybe have Alzheimer's? Maybe, maybe not. But some good news is that Alzheimer's is less common for those who sleep well and who exercise their body and mind. So like I said before, sleep is important and exercise. So let's get on that, everyone. Moving on to the social development. The midlife transition begins typically as people enter their 40s. And contrary to popular belief, there's like the midlife crisis, where you go out and buy a fancy car and get divorced and all that. It's not really true. Unhappiness, job dissatisfaction, marital dissatisfaction, divorce, anxiety, suicide, they don't surge in the early 40s. Typically, it's like major life events such as like losing your job or a serious illness, not the age itself, that create that kind of life crisis. And another little definition they had was the social clock, which is the quote unquote right time to leave home or get a job or have kids or retire. And that varies from culture to culture and era to era. And really, you shouldn't put too much stake in that, because everyone is an individual and you just need to do what's right for you. So if you need to retire at 60, go for it. If you need to retire at 70, go for it. There's no one right answer. And I think that's important to realize. So much of adulthood, from like early adulthood until you die, is driven by intimacy and generativity. So intimacy is the forming of close relationships, and generativity is being productive and supporting future generations. So going along with intimacy, people often think like, oh, well, if we live together beforehand, before we get married, then we can try it out and see if it works, and then that'll be better for us. Actually, that's not true. Cohabiting before marriage actually leads to a higher rate of divorce. And just one quick tidbit is that an indicator of marital success is a 5-to-1 ratio of positive to negative interactions. So if you are in a relationship, try to keep most things positive if you can, because that will hopefully lead to a happy marriage. And going on to the generativity section, having work that fits your interests and provides you with a sense of competence and accomplishment is really what that means. And you want to, just find something that gives you meaning for work. So I wouldn't fret too much about your major and all of that, because interests can change. And so just do what you think can give you a sense of accomplishment right now. And age actually gives no clue to life satisfaction. We do become more stable and trusting with age in our relationships. So as teenagers, there's a lot of turmoil and drama and all of that. But as we age, that tends to kind of mellow down. And the older we are, it's typically you remember the more positive things than the negative things. You look back on your earlier years with rose-colored glasses, I'd like to say. Adult moods are also less extreme, so you don't have the highs of highs, but you also don't have the lows of lows. You're kind of just more mellow and melancholy as you get older. Moving on to death, because we are all going to die at some point, and I think it's important to go over. There is not one right way to grieve. I think most of us have experienced death, whether it be like a loved one or a friend or something like that. And you just need to know that grieving is individual, and there's not necessarily one right way. One thing that isn't very good is the parents who like try to stay strong for their partner and don't grieve. They oftentimes prolong their grieving. Therapy and self-help groups can provide support. If you are struggling right now, feel free to reach out to CAPS. It's BYU's Counseling and Psychological Services on campus. You can find them at caps.byu.edu. They're really helpful. And just one kind of final fact is that people who are facing terminal illnesses are actually more positive than negative. So that's really cool. And so that's it. Getting old can be scary, but it doesn't have to be. Just remember to exercise, try to get a good night's rest. And I hope you have a great day.